Welcome, my friends. Silouan here. Man, I like to be happy, but I'm starting this out not very happy. And it's basically like we are dying right before our own eyes. Now, what do I mean we are dying? Well, probably more accurate to say Western culture, Western countries is dying. You see, to have a replacement rate of births in your country, you got to be at a birth rate at about 2.1. And then you'll get a little bit more babies, make up for, if there's epidemics that wipe out a whole bunch of people early. Now you get below that, you start going where even though you're having babies, your population is going like this. Now, here in the United States, our population has grown over the last 40, 50 years, primarily, not because we're making babies, but primarily because we have immigration, we have people coming into the country. Now, it's pretty stark when you think about it. So the total fertility rate in the United States, and again, you need 2.1 per woman to pretty much, keep your population stable. It'll kind of do this. We're at 1.6. Okay, that crude birth rate, if you do it per 1,000, is 10.7. Now, if you look back historically, so that puts us at like 10.7. That was up not even that long ago in the 20s per 1,000. The 1.6 back in the early 1900s was like 3.5. 1950, from like 1950 on, it was about 2, and then over the last few years, it just like dropped off, okay? And what's even scarier is the birth rates get lower and lower the younger you get. So the only reason we're even at 1.6 is because of the number of women in their 40s that still, more than young women today, tended to have kids. So, over time, what happens? Okay, over time, what happens? You die. Your country goes away. Now, that's probably not going to happen, although there have been times in human evolution. I believe there was one time they estimate we got down to 10,000 people on Earth, and the only way you grew out of it was like having babies. But I'm not really here today to talk about might be dead in 100 years. Okay, the bigger question is, we evolved, our DNA is to have a family and have babies and grow. That's how we're here. There's no other way. What has changed that isn't important? Now, you just do a little quick AI. I love hearing how AI summarizes things. Here's what, AI, when it searches the headlines in the news for what caused this, it says, societal changes and economic challenges. A change in how individuals balance family, work, and personal fulfillment is a significant factor. Issues, and then economic issues like unaffordable housing, costly childcare, and stagnant wages can make having children seem unattainable. Now, arguably, though, our poor have never been richer. Even a poor person's got a cell phone and a place to live. And societally, I love how they sort of put personal fulfillment ahead of everything else. Now, I think a better explanation gets to this guy, Brett Weinstein, evolutionary biologist from Harvard. The guy knows what he's talking about. And if you look really at the charts of when birth rate fell, families fell, it was almost directly correlates with the sexual revolution. Basically, it directly correlates with the availability of birth control and abortion. Okay, so, and what's the result of that? And again, what's interesting about Brett Weinstein, the guy is an atheist. Like, you start talking about sex and stuff, people want to make it about religion because I think it makes it easier to demonize people and to point fingers, where he just looks at it purely scientifically, why is this happening? So when you have, birth control and you have abortion, easy, okay? In a sense, for somebody who ethically, they're cool with that, You have taken away the consequences of sex, okay? Because one of the reasons that people had families and kids is because, to have sex, you needed to get married or else you were raising kids by yourself. But what's interesting, raising kids by yourself today's raising anyway, which gets to a whole other issue. But this is how he put it, that the sexual revolution led to a transactional hookup culture that treats sex as a commodity. Well, doesn't it? I mean, look at the number one commodity sold online, and it's sex, period. Okay, you look at what makes money online, it's porn sites, it's OnlyFans, okay? You look at people who are influencers, they're pretty people selling their sexuality. They're making sex a commodity. And what happens when you make sex a commodity? You replace quality with quantity, and it leads to the devaluation of relationships, because there's a practical aspect to why historically, for the millions of years human beings have evolved, we have relationships because you needed to have a relationship to have sex, to procreate, for the tribe to keep going, okay? And you couldn't just go around raping people, although in past history that has happened. So to procreate, you had to have relationships, you had to have families, you had to be nice to people. You couldn't treat sex like it was a commodity, okay? And that led to the evolution of our species, it led to the evolution of our culture, and then all of a sudden, just like that, all those barriers that keep sex, which is arguably one of our, probably other than our hunger and our survival instinct is our third most powerful instinct, you take all the barriers away. He believes that the current cultural course is a vicious cycle that can't be substantially corrected unless people return to a greater value for self-restraint and the sanctity of sex. I don't think you can argue that. I think it's one of those things that's like inarguable. We have less babies, okay, because people want sex to be a commodity they can enjoy. When it's a commodity that you enjoy, you don't want anything that makes it cost more. And when you're in a relationship with somebody or you're married to somebody, it costs more. It's a lot easier to be single. That leads to you completely commoditizing your entire life. So life becomes about what I have, what are my goods, okay? What's my car, what's my apartment, what restaurants can I go to? And then what happens, and I think you see this in a lot of people, especially women, none of that changes biology. Your biological clock doesn't change. Okay, people aren't living that much longer. In fact, over the last 5 or 6 years, U.S. life expectancy has gone down. Okay, so it's not like you're gonna live to be 120 and you can like have those kids later. A woman's biological clock is definitely not changing. If she's treating sex as a commodity through her 20s and 30s, by the time she's 40s, she's running out of time. Okay, she's running out of time. She's heading down a fast path to dying alone and knows it. Okay, and because a woman, nature, is a nurturer to take care of those kids, to be a mama bear. We're only here because that mama 200 years ago would die for that kid, to survive. Okay, would be the first one to be eaten so that kid could survive. So that instinct is still inside them. It doesn't go away. Well, what happens when that instinct doesn't have anything to protect? It's got to create something to protect. Okay, it could be a social issue, it could be a political issue, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But it's a vicious cycle, because see, it is a vicious cycle because making a commodity out of that puts off the thing that would give you the greatest value if you would try it, which is a family. And then when you can't have it, all you're left with is the commodity. So in your desperation, you're gonna do everything you can do to justify it. And then boom, you're an example for everybody else. And because we don't know the truth of people, because we only see the lie of people, you're some young 17-year-old girl and maybe your mom and dad don't get along because they both worked and they were both selfish and they didn't spend time with the family. And you're sitting there going, you know what, I don't know about this whole kids and family thing. I mean, look at my mom and dad, they just yell at each other. And then you drive by and you see like this 45-year-old woman with her Tesla Plaid in the driveway and nice house. And what you don't see is her in the corner of her bedroom on drugs, sad and alone. And, wondering, what have I done to get me here? But, that little 18-year-old girl sees that cool house and that cool car. And then when that woman, gets up out of her corner and she's taking her meds and she walks out the front door and she's looking all bright and shiny and look at me, 45's the new 20, even though biologically speaking, it's not. And that little 18-year-old girl goes, well, I want to be like her. Boom, vicious cycle, vicious cycle, vicious cycle. And the same thing happens to the boys. Same thing happens to the boys. They don't learn how to be a man. They don't learn how to put providing for other people first. They don't learn compassion. They don't learn all those things you learn when you're in a relationship with somebody who's different from you. And then it gives more reasons for the women to go, I need, asshole like that. And then the guys look at the girls and go, I don't need some girl like that. What kind of mom's she gonna be? It's sad. It's so sad. And again, I just want you to understand something. Nothing I've said has anything to do with religion. Nothing I've said has anything to do with like where you go to church. We want to demonize each other. Oh, you're just preaching to me. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just stating facts. Our society is dying. Okay, we only exist because we import people who have babies. Okay, but don't share our culture. Okay, so all that's happening is we're replacing that country with ours. That's what'll happen over time. I mean, what'll happen over time is our population will go down, the population of the people having babies will go up, and basically their culture will become our culture. That's what's gonna happen. Now you can argue whether you think that's good or bad. I mean, if you think we should be like Saudi Arabia or Somalia or wherever it may be, that's great, have that debate. I'm not even having that debate right now, okay? Whether it's good or bad or indifferent, it's just, that's what's gonna happen, okay? And where does that lead to? Because the last thing I wanna do is look at another human being and go like, you're a problem. I wanna look at another human being and go, I want you to have a happy, fulfilled life. I wanna look at another human being and I wanna go, hey, regardless of how much money you have or where you live or what your politics are or what you believe or what the color of your skin is, man, I don't care. I want you to have a happy life. And I can tell you, okay, as a guy who's lived a lot of life, you are gonna find happiness, true happiness, peace in relationships, close relationships with other people. You're gonna find happiness and peace in an ordered life where you've got discipline and you're doing things that matter, okay? Now, the only way to do that is not in a family. Totally, I would never say that. I would never say everybody needs to have their ambition to have a big family, but we need to be honest that if you're sitting there, and especially if you're young and you're asking yourself, what's gonna give me my best shot? Not my only shot, my best shot of being happy, of feeling free, of not valuing myself based upon how much money I have or where I live or what car I drive. It's gonna be, your best shot is gonna be, I've got somebody I love and they love me, and we're committed to each other that no matter how bad things get, we're gonna be by each other's side. And I've got kids that I'm mentoring and I'm loving and I'm raising and I'm finding value in them. And I'm creating a community around that, okay? Of friends, a family, maybe it's church, maybe it's not, whatever it is, that's your best shot. That's your best shot. That's all I'm saying. Okay, there's nothing wrong with saying that's your best shot because these two things are not mutually exclusive. This is not the only way to do it. It's the best way. Okay, you can say both of those. Okay, it's the best way. It's not the only way. And we've put so much focus on, well, there are other ways. We've devalued this, and the other way really hasn't led to a lot of people leading meaningful lives. It's just led to a lot of lonely, selfish people, which I don't think any of us wants. And you can see it in the death of our culture. Look at other issues I've talked about on this, like mental health and suicide. What is the number one predictive factor for depression and suicide? It's your social connections. The more close relationships you have, the less likely it is you're gonna get depressed. The less likely it is you're gonna kill yourself. Now, could you still get depressed? Could you still kill yourself? Sure you could. but it's less likely. You look at the most dangerous factor for mental health, it's loneliness. It's being lonely. Hard to be lonely, even when you don't like them, when you got a house full of people. You're definitely not lonely. Now, you might be mad, you might be angry, you might not be wanting to stick it out, and you let the fact that there are other human beings, okay, who have their own thoughts and their own dreams upset you, okay, and then you do what's easy to do today. Maybe you turn your back on them, maybe you leave them. That's you still might feel like doing that, but when you commit yourself to, I'm not going to do that. When you commit yourself to, the way I'm going to get through this is by putting them first. I want to put them first, okay? I'm here to be the dad. My wife and I were talking, just last night about, this. I won't go into too many details, but it's a friend of my son's, a younger man with 4 kids, 8 and under, and the mom abandoned them. Like, she lives 2 hours away. What kind of human being does that? I mean, and you know what? That mom lives in a culture that tells her that's cool. Although she's like infecting her children, okay? Although she's, literally making sure that they are gonna have to work harder to find meaning and purpose and safety and comfort and love than other kids. It doesn't mean they can't, and some of the best people I've ever met came out of circumstances like that. Heck, some of the best people I've ever met came out of worse circumstances than that, where both their parents abandoned them. And they're amazing people, but man, that's hard. That's so hard, okay? And then for every one person like that who's just this amazing human being that arose above adults being selfish and self-centered, are a whole bunch of other people that don't make it out of it. So what do I want you to do with that? What do I want you to do with that, okay? I want you to love somebody. That's what I want you to do. Because the end result of this is there's a lot of hurting people. There's a lot of lonely people. There are a lot of women raising kids on their own. There are a lot of men raising kids on their own. There are a lot of kids that wish they could come home and have a mom and dad at a supper table. There are a lot of kids that don't even know what that means, that don't even know what they're missing, okay? Like, we're so warped that a kid doesn't even know what a family is. Do your part, reach out. And something, I haven't really talked about this before, but I think some of the real heroes in our society are people that are willing to be foster parents, willing to adopt, okay? Maybe you find yourself older in life and you made the mistake of not putting any value on family and now you're alone. You can still build a family. There's still people you can help. Maybe you think you're too old to adopt. You're not too old to be a foster parent, okay? Think of all the children in need, okay, who have no connection, that don't know where they're going to be living next month. And what if somebody that maybe learned their lessons in life and could pass those values on to those kids, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You got a family. All of a sudden, you got someone to share love with. And I can tell you, in my house, we got a lot of kids. We got 9 kids. I don't talk about that too much. And you think to yourself, sometimes people will say, you can tell they're kind of thinking like, well, how do you spread the love of 9 kids? And here's the deal. With each one of them, the love gets bigger. I promise you, I never sit around and go, how am I going to give enough love to all these kids? Because you know what? The house is filled with it. Because you got those 2 kids over in the corner talking, and you got mom cooking in the kitchen with these 3, and you got the 2 boys outside playing basketball together, and it's a whole bunch of people doing stuff together. And even though the arguing is great, and the wrestling is great, and why do my 2 boys always want to fight each other, and why does my one daughter get mad at me? So who knows why? But in spite of all that, what you come away with is, man, there's a lot of love in this house. And it will be the same thing with you. So do something to love somebody else. Because at the end of the day, what falls apart when we got a birth rate of 1.6 is love for each other. And it gets too easy to focus on ourselves. It gets too easy, this vicious cycle that Brett Weinstein talked about, to continue. And we get alone, and we get selfish, and then people don't talk to us, people don't care about us because they don't know us, and then we go, look, people are bad, and then it just makes us more selfish, and it's this vicious cycle. Where if you will just step out of yourself and love somebody, okay? Maybe it's a small commitment, it's just that person you meet today and you're nice to them. Maybe it's a big commitment, okay? Take some of that money you have. Again, maybe be a foster parent, maybe adopt somebody, maybe mentor somebody, maybe be a big brother, a big sister to somebody. See, there's an answer to all this, and the beauty of it is it helps us. If you love somebody, you're not just helping them, you're helping yourself. And then maybe we can go from 1.6 to 1.7 to 1.8 to, because that's where the love is. So, thanks for being with me today, and let me start off with, we're dying. Hopefully we ended up a little more hopeful, because love's easy. You got an opportunity every day to spread the love. So spread a little love, and I will see you again next time. I'm Silouan. Thanks for being with me. Make sure you share this, comment, tell your friends about it. I'm out.